What's going on YouTube? My name's Greg. My homies call me G-Dub. Today I wanted to talk about why it feels like everything is so damn expensive. I keep hearing this all the time. I see it on YouTube, I see it on Instagram, I see it all over the place. And everybody has different takes on what is going on. And, well, prices are just getting too high. And everybody is talking about the symptom of the problem. But the problem is our money is losing its value. So ever since that they took our dollar off of the gold standard and our money hasn't been backed and has become fiat, was the beginning of the end of our money. And so the fact that they could just print as much as they wanted in the beginning, they didn't need to print a bunch, and so they were just printing what they needed to get by, and it just slowly turned into more and more and more. We are already gonna have problems. Ever since the 2008 housing crisis, basically, as soon as they turned on the money printers and they did quantitative easing, that right there is why the price of everything is just continually going up. Because the more money that is printed, the less valuable the money you have sitting in your bank is. And so that's what inflation is, and that's what everybody's talking about. And that's why the Fed is raising and lowering interest rates, trying to keep inflation at a minimum, because if they flood too much money into the market and there's too much money going around, well, then prices go up. And people start to charge more and more, because it's like, well, hey, I only have a finite amount of goods, but I have a lot of people with money trying to buy this. So that's what they do. So they raise prices of houses, mainly the prices of assets. And we know that most of the middle class don't have any assets except for potentially owning a home. But so whenever the price goes up and they print, the people who are up at the top are coming up, because the more money that's printed, the more money that we have, the more money that we spend in the economy, and they own the assets, and it drives up the prices. So that is what's going on. That's what's going on right now. That's why everybody is feeling the pinch. That's why houses are at an all-time high. That's why stocks are at an all-time high. That's why gold's at an all-time high. Bitcoin, everything is at all-time high, because pretty much, especially since COVID, and they printed so much money, all of that is now catching up to us. All that printing, all that money they're giving out to everybody, myself included, when they were sending those checks, I was like, yeah, make it rain. They bring the checks in. But no, that was the stupidest thing ever, because all of us got a little bit of money, but we all spent it in stores and buying crap, and basically we drove the prices up of everything. So that's what's happening right now. So that's the problem that we are dealing with, and it's hitting every single facet of life, because our dollar is becoming less and less valuable. So it always has, and it always will, as long as they don't have it backed to anything. Trump is thinking about potentially partially backing it again to gold, which actually would strengthen the dollar. But most currencies usually in the past have ran for about 100 years. I believe we're at like 113 years. It's just the way that the cycle and that money works. And a lot of the time, I can't be positive, but I believe it's because people printing money, or because they're diluting the money. And it always happens. Greed takes over, and for some reason, that's just the span of when a world reserve currency. That's how long it lasts. It usually lasts for about 100 years, and then something else comes in and then replaces it or starts to compete with it. And so that's why we're seeing the BRICS. I think they were potentially trying to do that, but that's going to be a hard thing to do, because the America and the Americans and our spending is what everybody wants. Unfortunately, everything that we're buying is on debt, and we can't afford it. And so that is a big issue. And it's funny, because all these countries are willing to bargain and fight for the Americans able to sell to America. But that's what's, we don't have any more money. We borrow all of the money, and most people are tapped out. I mean, everything's at an all-time high, and that is including debt and student loans. Everything is at an all-time high. Our dollar is becoming less valuable. If you were to look back in the day about how many ounces of gold it would take to buy a house, now if you were to take that same amount and basically add it through the years and inflation, it's still roughly about the same amount to buy a house as it is gold. I forget what it is, like 100 ounces of gold. Back in the day, that's what it was, 100 ounces of gold to buy a house. And now through 50, 75 years later, it's still roughly about potentially maybe 100 ounces to buy a house. And so that's what's going on. So our dollar is becoming less valuable. Gold is holding its value, and that's why its price is just slowly going up. And so because there's a finite amount of gold, we know how much gold is out there, and they're usually mining it at a certain percentage. So a lot of that stuff is controlled. So we know, aside from basically a meteor hitting that has trillions of dollars of gold in it, which that would cause a whole bunch of issues by itself just from a meteor hitting, but something like that would potentially change the price and make some big moves. But that's not going to happen. At least, I haven't heard anything about it. So that is what is going on. That's why everything is so expensive. And that's why everyone just keeps raising the price. And because our dollar is worthless, our dollar is becoming worthless. It's still the world's reserve currency. So it's going to take a long time for something to come in and replace it. Who knows? I mean, that's why people are thinking Bitcoin, and potentially that could be something that can start to replace it. But we know that the government and the elites and the people who are in charge of this system are not going to go down without a fight, and they are going to be invested into whatever it is going to be well ahead of the public, because the elites and the people with money, they are who run the world. And so they are the ones who pay for the lobbying. They're the ones who make things happen. And so, really it's like we should watch what they're doing with their money. And it looks like right now there's a lot of elites who are kind of pulling money out of the stock market, because the stock market's at an all-time high. Potentially a recession is looming over our heads. And I think that there will be, with the tariffs and that whole war, I don't think it's over yet, and I think that we're going to start running into issues, and it's going to start showing up. We're going to start getting products that aren't going to be on our shelves, and it's just going to start making for a very volatile economy. And so it may have potentially given more money to the government. Let's be honest, the tariffs aren't going to do anything for you or for me. It's going to just raise the prices, and the government is going to get that 15, 30 to 50% or whatever they're negotiating. So, I'm not super big on the tariffs. I know that it is much better than if they were to be just printing money on the other side, because I think if the other side were in charge, then they probably would just be printing money, and then the value of our dollar would just really go down, especially when they weaponize the world's reserve currency against the other countries. And so with Donald Trump in office, it seems like it's a little bit more stable. But it feels like he's pushing Bitcoin. But I think that he's trying to potentially make Bitcoin some sort of... I think there is a lot of issues going on with our money that we have no idea about, especially with the banking system, especially with all that debt that's going to have to get
refinance
here in a couple years, all that commercial real estate debt. I think there's a lot of things going on, and I just don't think that they're giving us the full picture. And so I know for me and myself, I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying not to have everything tied up, have all my money in one bank. I'm trying to buy a certain percentage of my net worth in gold and digital stocks, gold, and also some stocks. I have a 401k that I put into. I do Roth IRA, and so I wanted to get taxed. I just don't know what is going to happen in the future. But so I'm trying to play it safe. I don't know what is going to happen, but I know that we are going to be the last ones to find out. So if one thing's for sure, if there are runs on banks, then I mean, I don't know, this whole thing could be over. If people start running and trying to get their money out of the bank, ever since COVID, I believe they dropped down. They used to have to hold 10% of your money. Now I think they only have to have 1%. So could you imagine if everybody goes in, I mean, and even just asks for 10% of their money, they probably wouldn't be able to give it to them. So the banks are insolvent. And so I think I've been telling my family members, I think people need to be careful. The big banks are probably not going to fall, but whenever that debt has to start getting refinanced and at these different interest rates, I think that's when we're going to start seeing some issues. And so, like I say, we will be the last ones to know. So you're going to have to kind of try to piece it together, read between the lines, and try to stay on YouTube. I would stay away from mainstream media because they are not going to tell you. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do by buying stuff, spending money. You know, I would be not spending crazy amounts of money trying to lower my debt, just trying to prepare for a potential storm that could be coming our way. Because I feel like it is. I feel like there's a lot of evidence pointing to that there is something going on behind the scenes, and, you know, let alone the fact that China could be starting to collapse and have big issues, and we don't even know what's going on with them, and that would definitely affect us. So there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't know, and I think people just need to prepare and just keep looking into what is going on and trying to stay proactive and trying to just hedge and prevent, if something does go on, you know, that you're not going to lose 30% of your net worth over some nonsense. It's going to be hard, but it is doable. There are people who are going to make money with whatever is going to happen. But so at least what we can do is I'm just trying to hedge, and, well, I mean, I'm trying to make money, but at the minimum, I want to try not to lose money. And so it's tough. I bought gold back in the day when it was younger, or I bought gold back in the day when it was cheaper. Now that it's an all-time high, it's hard to say. You know, silver, potentially. I mean, I think silver's around $30. It's been around $30, but the high was only about $50 for the most part. And so there's a little bit of room to go up, but you know, holding precious metals, buying homes, if you could get a home and got it at a good rate, that would be a good way to invest your money and just keep paying that off. Something along those lines, but you're just going to have to be careful and prepare for what is going to be going on. So I wanted to just make this video and just telling people that you're not going crazy. Things are going up, but it is not what you think. It's not because of administration. It's not because of anything. It's really because of the Fed. It's because of the Fed. Our government is so bloated and it costs so much money that we have to spend so much money just to keep it going. That's a major issue. Sounds like potentially they're trying to work on that, but they would have to cut the government in half for it to actually make any sort of effect. And that is jobs for everybody and tons of people. And so it's going to be tough. It kind of needs to happen, cut the bloat and get rid of that stuff because we can't afford it. But we know that that's not going to happen. I don't think there's much is going to be going down. Basically, for the next of whatever, it's just going to be this game. We're going to play a Republican game for 4 years. Then who knows? People are going to start not liking the way Donald Trump and Elon are doing it, so they're going to go the other way for 4 years, and then they'll go crazy their way, and then it'll push people back over to the other side. I just feel like that's basically what we have going on, and that's right where the elites want us. They want us in chaos and worried about race and all this other stuff, because that way we're not focusing on money and basically coming together and trying to lift ourselves out of poverty. But that's what they don't want. So it's going to be tough. You're fighting an uphill battle, but you can do it. There are channels and video and people out there who can help you. Be very careful, because there's a lot of people who are trying to separate you from your money. So keep your game tight, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Later.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.